Prime Minister taking a very hard line against looters and rioters in his speech to Parliament. Let's talk about that speech with Matt Cavanagh, who joins us from London. He is Associate Director of a leading UK think tank, the Institute for Public Policy Research. Matt, good to speak with you. What did you think of the speech? Not about politics, that the rioting was about theft, pure and simple.
I mean, this has been a traumatic and serious few days for London and for some of Britain's other cities, for the people who've been directly involved living in those areas, and also the rest of the country who's been watching the events unfold on television. And I think it was good to see both the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition party unite in a clear message that this behaviour is unacceptable, and the police need to tackle it, and the whole of the political class needs to back up the police in doing so.
So, Matt, were you at all taken aback by the tone of the Prime Minister over the last couple of days? Because I'm starting to hear some pushback that calling the looters thugs and using language like that is not helpful, and that maybe a better approach is to engage some of the young people.
I do think we need to get away from this false choice of saying, either you condemn the looters or you try and understand them. The fact, the two are not alternatives. Clearly you need to condemn, people engaging in criminal behaviour and scaring members of the public and damaging property. But at the same time, unless you think this is just a one-off or a random event, you need to try and understand some of the causes that lie behind it. To say that is not to excuse it. It's just to say, the Prime Minister says, those communities and the families within them need to take responsibility for their actions. He's right. But at the same time, government needs to take responsibility for the effects of its policies, the policies that it's proposing for the next few years. Are they going to make things better in those communities, or are they going to make them worse? Are they going to increase the risk of this happening again, or are they going to reduce it?
Yeah, so you would have probably been a little disappointed to hear the Prime Minister say that he doesn't want a tireless, his word, a tireless debate on the whys and wherefores of the rioting.
Yeah, I think he said, let's get away from this tiresome or boring debate about resources and spending. And you've just heard the Chancellor say that there's going to be no plan B in terms of government spending. But there are two ways in which resources just do matter to this debate. One is the obvious one of police cuts. One of the ways in which the police and the government have belatedly got control of this issue after the first couple of days when it seemed out of control is by flooding the streets of London and other cities with police. The problem the government's got is that their plans will cut 16,000 police officers over the next few years. That's basically exactly the same amount as have been put onto the streets over the last few nights. That's the first point about resources. The second point is, it is a factor that there is very high unemployment in some of these areas. Youth unemployment, long-term youth unemployment in particular. It was high back in the 80s when we had some of the riots then. These are different riots now. They have a different flavour. They're not, we're all sort of relieved to see that they don't have a very strong racial element like they had back in the 1980s. But some of the underlying factors are the same. If you have communities which are, without, it's fine for him to say these young people and their families need to take responsibility, but they also need to have a sense of opportunity and of hope. And, the question is, what has the government got to offer in that respect? Well,
Matt, I appreciate your time. I guess the final word will belong to the Prime Minister on this, who said, paraphrasing here, when you have deep moral failings, which is kind of his description of what happened here, you don't hit them with a wall of money. Matt, appreciate your time. Thank you.